Some of the best inventions in life happen by accident, creating on-brand, crisp UIs easier than ever. And it blows tools like Lovable out of the water. So no more rolling the dice and just hoping that one of these tools pops you out some app that actually looks good. No more kneeling down and praying to statues of Sam Altman. Ha 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 ha. Just kidding. That would be weird. But really, just a two-step prompt system that honestly produces outstanding results. And in this video, I'm going to give it to you. Nothing held back, no secret stuff I'm doing under the hood. I'm going to show you the prompts, we're going to implement them in Cursor, and we're going to see what we get on the other side. So first, we're going to do a prep step where we prepare some high-level system guidelines. Then we're going to get into the real magic of it, where we deconstruct my original vibe design system into two separate prompts. And then third, we're going to chain it all together to get some pretty amazing outputs. So this video is going to be perfect for you if, number one, you're trying to move away from tools like Lovable and Replit and V0, but your design skills just aren't there yet. And you kind of are finding yourself at the mercy of whatever those systems seem to feel like giving you on any given day. Number two, maybe you're already a vibe code aficionado using tools like Cursor and Windsurf, but the UI designs you get just kind of look like a steamy pile of poop. Or number three, you're really just new to this vibe code stuff altogether, and you want to see how this design step fits into my overall 4-step vibe coding system. Because at the end of the day, if your app looks like crap, no one's going to buy it. So let's turn that crap into an app that slaps, shall we? So right out of the gate here, if we look at one of our final outputs that I was doing on another project for the 4-hour-long tutorial on this whole process that's going to be in my free school group, shameless plug, you can get it down below. You can see that things like kind of feel like they belong, right? Like even down to something like asking for microphone access, or what the recorder and the different animations might look like, or what does this look like when the AI is actually transcribing it and it's going through different stages. Like things kind of feel like they belong. Strategic use of white space in different pieces of the app, proper use of accent colors, UI components indicating like different states of the app and what's going on, different animations like this thing right here. There's like a lot of stuff that's being considered. And so the first step, if you want to like force your app to start being like this and being really dialed in when you're producing new components, is that you first need to identify the app's philosophy and what it's meant to be and how it's meant to communicate with the user, and codify that into a style guide that you can use to prompt every time you want to build something new. And so let's talk about what that actually looks like. And so we have our prompt here, and let's just take a look at like the main pieces of it, right? So we're prompting it first to tell it is a product designer, and you can have access to this, by the way. This will be for free in the school group under the video that has a matching thumbnail to whatever this video was. So you'll be able to get this prompt. So I'm not going to go through like tiny little things like this. I'm going to talk about what this all kind of means. So the first big piece, we have the inspiration section. So if you want to pull inspiration from screenshots of other apps using a tool like Mobbin, you can do that. But the first piece is we get into the aesthetics, meaning what are the overarching principles that define an app that actually does it right? The way that I made this was going out and looking at different product design books, product design YouTube channels, asking tools like Claude and ChatGPT, like what constitutes high performing, like enterprise level SaaS design? What are the philosophies behind those apps? And so we built that into an aesthetics guideline, right? So things like strategic negative space, visual density optimization, balancing information, motion choreography, implementing physics-based transitions, all of these different things, right? So we're giving it like an overarching, like, hey, you need to do all of these things. Then we have this practicality section, and this is where you want to like fill in anything that you specifically want to see in this thing that might not be apparent. So for example, I like to make sure to tell it all the time, like, hey, this is going to be an iOS app. I know you're designing this thing in React, but this is going to be an iOS and Android app. So I want you to design specific cards or screens. If you have specific thoughts on what you want a color palette to be, like out of the gate, like what you're kind of thinking, you can put that in here. And anything else specific that you really want to see in this thing, you can put that here. And then we get down, we give a brief overview of what the app actually is. And then in this first task piece, we're telling it, hey, I need you to build me a style guide, okay? And so the style guide needs to take into account the following things: primary colors, secondary colors, accents, functional colors, right? Like successes and warning indicators, background colors, different fonts, buttons, input styling, card styling, icons, app spacing, how the motion and animation should work in the app. So we're going to tell it, like, I want you to go and I want you to think about all of this in the context of what this app is, and that I want it to be a really professionally designed app. And then we go through and we tell it, you're going to put all of that into a design brief. And here's an example of how I want that formatted. And so then we go through and we give us an example of this being done already. So color palette breaks down primary colors, secondary colors, accents, functional colors, like all of these different things are already in here. And so it's going to go and it's going to use that as inspiration in order to build things out. And so I'm going to pause the screen for 1 second. I'm going to actually fill out some of these sections for a theoretical app, and then we'll talk about it and we will go build this thing. Okay, so I fill this in for an app that I am thinking about making. It's an app where you take pictures of dishes at a restaurant and you give the menu description and what it tastes like, and it produces you a Michelin star version of that recipe to cook at home. So the audience here is like home cooks that they like to go out and eat, but sometimes they just have an amazing meal and they come back and like, man, I wish I could make that. That was so good. And so this is all I'm really giving the system. The one other practicality I gave it up here, I want it to be like techie and kind of like a deep maroon red type of vibe. And I said it should feel somewhat refined. And so another thing I did was I went out to Mobbin, which is a tool that I love. I think it's like $30 a month. Full disclosure, it is not free. But they pull app screens from every major app out there. And so you can come through and pull inspiration from different apps. Maybe I really liked Chopped, so I could go into the Chopped app and kind of see how they did things, and I could port it over there if I wanted to. And so I pulled a few of those screenshots, but outside of that, I did not change anything. So we're going to copy this entire thing, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go over to Claude, and we are going to paste that in, and then I'm also going to paste in some of those images that I just downloaded, okay? And so unfortunately, it actually lets you select all of them now. It did not used to let you do that. Okay, so all of those are pasted in, and I'm just gonna hit go on this bad boy, and then we are gonna come back as soon as this is done. Okay, so that took about 60 seconds roughly, and here we go. So it went out and it did the entire thing, right? So we have this color palette breaking down all the primary colors, the typography, font sizes for different pieces and where they should be used, component styling for buttons and actions, and it knows there's going to be recipe cards in there, so it's thinking about all that type of stuff. Really was pretty comprehensive, to be honest, with this thing. And so what we're going to do is we're going to come through and we're just going to literally copy that entire output. And so this is huge because we have a source of truth now, right? We have a style guide that anything else we choose to build is going to have to conform to this. So no more random BS colors that fly out of one of these tools like Lovable, and you're like, how the hell did you just decide to do that? No more of all that nonsense wasted time on things that don't conform to the style and aesthetics of what we're already working with. But this isn't even the cool part, because now we're going to take this and we're going to feed it into the first real step, where we take our feature list and we force Claude to think about our features from the perspective of a product designer, not a developer, right? Someone whose job it is to just build beautiful functional designs that make sense for a user. And so let's check that out. And so this next piece, honestly, like it was a bit of a moment for me, because it's a step, and I'm sure you've run into this sometimes, where you figure the thing out and then everything you do after that just works so much better. And so after this step, I really started churning out super high quality designs every single time I needed to build something new. Anytime I had a new screen, anytime a new feature, anytime a new component, it's just like on the money every time now. So what we're trying to do here is actually pretty simple. So what we want to do is we want to take our features and we want to tell the AI that its role is to think about these like as a product designer. Meaning, I want you to think about things like the information architecture, the progressive disclosure of information so that the user's not overwhelmed, the visual hierarchy of the app, the interactivity of different components, animations, how they're going to work, the copywriting inside of the app, feedback signals to the user, things that, again, in like a professional startup or SaaS environment, there is a person whose job is to do all of that before it ever goes to a front-end developer. So let's do exactly that. So here's our prompt. It's mostly the same as before, okay? A few small differences that, again, you can just go copy this prompt in the free school group. So I'm not going to go through all these really tiny things. So let's talk about what is meaningfully different then. And so like I just showed you, we have this first piece here where we're telling it to think through these different things, because these are things that a product designer would actually think about. So it's not just about like, how does this thing function, and what does the API call to the backend need to be, and what does the schema need to look like, and all of that type of stuff. This is like, how would a human being think through making a person feel a certain way using your app, making sure things are super intuitive, that information is displayed intelligently, that the hierarchy of information makes sense, that animations smoothly transition a user from one state to another state. All of those sorts of things. And so you could, of course, add on to this. Like if you thought that I missed something, right, you could come in here and you could add on to this. And so the second piece is that we give the format we want our brief in, okay? And so the way that I've broken this down is here's the overall feature. So maybe this is like the photo upload piece of that app, right, where you take a picture of the restaurant. And then the first screen, so maybe this is like the actual camera itself, right? And the user's opened up the camera. And then what are the different states of that screen? And then within each state, I want a detailed description of the UI, the UX, animations, what colors need to be used for different pieces of it, all of that type of stuff. And so the reason we do it this way is that if you think about it, most screens change state, right? As users are interacting with the app, things happen, the state of the app updates, the display of information updates. And so we want to use the language model to take each screen and how it's meant to function and brainstorm different states of that screen. What does it look like when it's blank? What does it look like when you click on the chat bubble thing? What does it look like when there's an error? What does it look like when there's a success? I wanted to brainstorm through all of that stuff for each major feature, each major screen. Then we can come through and we can paste in that style guide that we just made. So we can come in here and we can paste this in. And then lastly, if we scroll up, a lot of stuff in there, we got to scroll up right here. We need to put in the feature that we want it to build. And so what are the features we are designing and how are they meant to work? And so shameless plug, if you are interested in that planning piece where we get that feature to begin with that we're about to paste over, I've got at least 2 videos about it here on my YouTube channel that I will link you to below. And I've also got a 4-hour tutorial on this, like in-depth stuff coming to my school group for free about the planning process. That's coming on Wednesday, May 7th of the year 2025. I'm not sure if someone from the future is watching this. So we can just run over there, right? So this is an example of that and the type of stuff that we get out of it. And so I can just grab some of those features and paste them in. Now, I'm not going to go through the user authentication piece because, I mean, that's not as exciting. So let me scroll through. And so let's say it's the first piece, which is the dish photo capture and analysis piece. And so I can come through here and I can literally just copy all of this stuff. So I can come through here and I'll copy it right down to here, copy. And so we're going to run over here and we're going to paste in that first feature. Okay. And I'm going to actually just paste in one more. So let's go down to what the next feature here would be. And so this is a feature where an individual user can give things like, oh, what's their taste profile, how they prefer to cook, like maybe what implements they have access to, special ingredients, things like that, so that the recipes that come out are as good as possible. So let's go through, we copy all this, okay? We're gonna hop back over here. We're going to paste that in. Now we're gonna just take all of this that we have, we're gonna copy it. We're gonna go back over into Claude. I'm gonna create a new chat for maximum context. We're going to paste it in, and then we will come back as soon as this is done generating. And so boom, here we go. This thing it's still in the middle of going, but let's just look at some of these outputs, right? So now we can look at, okay, like here's the main feature that we pasted in, that first one, right? Which was the dish photo capture. And now what does the camera screen look like? Well, there's going to be a default state. There's going to be the state where you've just captured it, right? You've just captured the image. When we talk about the photo preview, it's like, okay, let's preview that photo we took. What does the initial state look like? What does it look like as it's analyzing that, right? And determining what's inside it and like all of that type of stuff. What does the results screen look like? right? All of these different things that it's like, okay, these are all like meaningful uses of time to really think about those. And then within each of those individual screens, individual states, we're now looking at the details of it, right? So things like, hey, the primary shutter button, which is going to be centered at the bottom, needs to have this big of a button that is the primary color from the app, right? And the focus indicator needs to be exactly this wide, and it needs to work in this way. When the camera's activated, the transition comes in, the animation has a 200 millisecond ease out that introduces the interface, right? You have all of these, like, we're getting into like details of things. And that obviously continues, right? So as we go down and down and down and down, we get to like the analysis state, for example, where it's like, hey, when the analysis is taking place, the background needs to go into a semi-transparent mode, and then there should be a pulsing animation that subtly is growing and shrinking to indicate that it's analyzing your dish. And then it's saying identifying ingredients with a loading bar, and then detecting cooking methods with the loading bar, right? It's doing all this pretty cool stuff. And obviously this continues now through every feature we gave it. And this was only like 2 of the features. And we could obviously go through and say, I want you to think of more of these states, right? Maybe we have in our mind that was like, hey, there should actually be this other 3rd state or 4th state or 5th state, or we tell it, go brainstorm, are there going to be other states? So you can really dial this in for something that works for you. And so now let's think about this for a second in the context of what we've really just done with this step. If we were just to go to like Cursor or Claude or Lovable or V0 or whatever, if we were to go to one of those tools and tell it, hey, go build me a photo preview screen for my recipe app that functions in this way, it would not have considered all of this stuff, right? It wouldn't have had the style guide and thinking about all of the different buttons and the animations and how they work together in the hierarchy of information and how it's presented to a user and what you only show them when they choose to proceed further through a screen. It wouldn't have thought of all of that stuff, meaning we'd have something that like functionally probably works, but it does not show us really what we want to see, and it isn't something that really like wows us. And so this product designer stage that we've just done is really super critical to the entire process. And now once we have that, we can move on to the final stage here in this design step, which is building out these design screens and looking at them. And so to get this to work, you really only need 2 things: a basic React project, which I will show you in a second, and an AI IDE like Cursor or Windsurf, or the technical knowledge to, I don't know, use something like Claude Code and your own IDE, like whatever you choose to do. But you need at least like those 2 solutions. So in order to do this on your computer, pretty straightforward. So go create a new directory. So I'm in a folder called Vibe Planning. And so I could say I'm going to make a new directory, and this could just be like YouTube example for me, and I'll go into that folder. And then we're just going to do pretty simple npx create-react-app, and then give the folder a name that you want this all to go into. And I'll say like recipe designs. And it's going to run through. It's just going to download whatever it needs. If you need help on this, that's not the context of this video. So you can ask ChatGPT to help you through this stuff, and it will give you all the debugging you could ever hope for. Okay, so that just finished. Now I'm going to go into the directory, and I'm going to say npm start. And if you have now done that, you should have this kind of spinning screen. So this is where we're going to start from. Okay, so what we need to do now is we just need to go back and copy. I like to do this personally screen by screen. So I do not like to just give it the whole thing and go in one swoop. You can try that. I like to go screen by screen. And so you're going to go through, you're going to copy that screen, and then we're going to go back to our prompts, and we're going to go into this last prompt we have. And now just make sure, so you'll have this prompt again, which you can get below the video. You don't need to change anything outside of, again, the practicalities. Make sure these are copied over from the last one. Make sure your app overview is updated for the correct app. Make sure that your task, so this is one of the updates. We're now telling it to go screen by screen to create this thing. And so we want to tell it, hey, here's what the first few screens look like. So we're building this feature, the camera screen, 2 different states, the default state, which is number 1, and the feedback state, which is number 2. And then make sure the style guide is the correct style guide. If you're bouncing around between projects, you don't want to give it the wrong style guide. So we can copy those things. So we have the entire prompt copied. I'm going to go over into a obnoxiously large cursor window to blow it up here so you guys can see it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste this stuff in. Now I like to use my tokens in this stage on like powerful models. So you could even consider using Max if you want to, but let's just use, actually, yeah, I'm going to use Max for this one. And then we just want to paste in that prompt we have. Okay. If you have any specific last request. You can look through this thing and decide what you want to update. But we have all the features in there. We have our every single thing basically. And so we're going to tell this thing to go, and then I'm going to pause when we have our first output. All right, guys. So that took about 15 minutes. I went through and ran the prompt through for a few different screens, and I added in a few little helpful, tinier things like adding numbers above each screen so that if I want to get feedback, I can. Some examples of what I already know I don't like. I do not like that it chose this kind of serify font. It looks like Times New Roman to me. I do not like it. But as we go through, we can see it added, some sort of animations, different states for things. And I mean, overall, I think the designs, they look somewhat nice. So I think I would spend a little bit more time dialing this in, to be honest. But it is already off to a really good start. Like I would have never conceived of like designing things in this way. I think it did a nice job with different pieces of this. And again, this is the same exact system that I used to create all of these screens for my AI voice note-taking app. So same exact prompt systems. Again, with a little bit of dialing in. I think this took me maybe 30 minutes to create all of these screens. So all in all, a pretty cool little prompt system we have here. So let's zoom out again to like a 1,000-foot view. This stage is really critical because once we have these screens, then we can go out and build something, like building the databases, building what the backend schemas need to look like, what the backend APIs need to look like, the front-end systems and like the actual components. We already have so much of the thinking out of the way because we took the time to think really about what each of these individual pieces of our app need to look like. So no more telling the system, okay, now go build me this next new feature. And it goes out and it builds the feature and it looks nothing like what you kind of wanted it to. And it uses all this other random shit. And next thing you know, you have this feature in your app and you've lost track of it. And now you have all this bloated code and it doesn't do what you wanted it to do. All of that kind of goes away when we adopt this type of system. And so from here, you can move on to that fourth step of the process, which is going out and actually building all of these things, right? The execution of the code. And then you can just start churning out stuff that looks really nice and also works. And what is better than that? So that is it for this video. Oftentimes, breaking down these problems into smaller individual problems is really all that's needed. You experiment, you iterate, you experiment some more, and you're bound to eventually create something that's pretty awesome. And so I'd love it if you guys could maybe tell me how you use these types of prompts, if you have your own prompts, what some of the outputs look like. Let me know in the comments below the video. That being said, that is all for this video, and I will see you in the next one.